In the 1970s, inside the headquarters of one of the most powerful automotive corporations on the planet, a secret financial calculation took place. It wasn't about building a faster car, nor was it a plan for market dominance. It was a cold-blooded mathematical calculation, putting a dollar value on a human life. Senior executives sitting in that luxury boardroom weighed two numbers on a balance scale. On one side was $11, the cost to fix a fatal design flaw on the most popular family car of that era. And on the other side was $200,000, the amount they projected having to pay in compensation to the family of each victim if that car burned them alive. And they made a decision, a crazy decision. They chose to pay out wrongful death settlements for the corpses instead of spending $11 to save their lives. Welcome back to Decoded. Today, we are unraveling one of the darkest, most shameless corporate scandals in American history. A story of greed, reckless indifference, and a car that turned into a rolling steel coffin on every American highway. To understand why this disaster happened, we have to travel back in time to the late 1960s. At this point, the American auto industry was facing a nightmare named Japan and Germany. American drivers, long accustomed to driving gas-guzzling land yachts, were falling in love with compact, fuel-efficient cars like the Volkswagen Beetle and Toyota Corolla. Ford Motor Company, led at the time by its ambitious and legendary president, Lee Iacocca, began to panic. Iacocca issued an ironclad directive to the entire engineering team. We must build a subcompact car to crush the competition, and this car must strictly adhere to the 2,000 by 2,000 rule. It cannot weigh more than 2,000 pounds, and it cannot cost more than $2,000. And most importantly, it had to launch within 25 months. Now, you need to know that back then, the standard timeline to develop a brand new vehicle model was 43 to 45 months. Squeezing that down to 25 months, that was an insane pace. To meet the deadline, Ford did something completely backward. They produced the assembly line tooling at the same time as the design and crash testing process.
So, when engineers took the car out for crash tests and discovered a fatal flaw, the assembly line tooling worth tens of millions of dollars was already locked in. Redesigning the car? Ford would lose millions of dollars and fall behind the competition. So they made a choice: sell it anyway. And just like that, in 1970, the Ford Pinto was born. But little did anyone know, they had just unleashed a monster onto the public roads.
Now, let's crawl under the belly of the Ford Pinto to see how Ford's engineers accidentally designed a guillotine on wheels. To make it easy to visualize, imagine you're riding a standard motorcycle. The gas tank is safely tucked away in the middle of the body, right? On the Ford Pinto, however, to save interior space and meet that under 2,000 pounds requirement, engineers pushed the gas tank all the way to the very rear of the car. It didn't stop there. This thin, fragile fuel tank was placed directly behind the rear axle, the metal shaft connecting the two back wheels. And on that metal axle, engineers left sharp, protruding steel bolts and screws. It was like wearing a rubber balloon full of gasoline on your back, with a bundle of sharp knives strapped right in front of it. Whenever a Ford Pinto was rear-ended by another vehicle
at a speed of just 20 to 25 miles per hour, a totally normal speed in traffic jams or at red lights. First, the paper-thin rear bumper collapsed instantly. Second, the gas tank was rammed forward against the rear axle.
Third, those sharp bolts punctured the gas tank like a sharp knife driving into a balloon. And all it took was a single spark from a severed electrical wire. Boom! The car erupted into a massive fireball in a split second. But the tragedy didn't end there. When the frame buckled from the rear impact, the light body warped, causing the doors to jam shut completely. The passengers inside couldn't open the doors to escape. They were trapped inside a blazing iron furnace. A perfect design to leave no way out. And what was the absolute worst part? Ford knew this full well before the very first car ever rolled off the line. In internal crash tests, Ford rear-ended the Pinto 11 times. The result? 8 out of 11 times, the gas tank exploded. The only 3 times it didn't explode were when they secretly placed a protective rubber baffle between the tank and the sharp bolts. Ford's engineers presented this solution to executive management. To permanently fix the explosion hazard, they proposed a simple rubber plastic guard. The cost per car? Just $11. But Ford's management took one look at that $11 figure and started doing math. They drew up a cost-benefit analysis so shameless, it became a textbook case study in corporate law ethics for decades to come. If they fixed all 12.5 million cars and light trucks, it would cost them $137 million. If they did not fix them and simply paid out accident claims, they estimated about 180 burn deaths and 170 severe burn injuries per year. For each death, Ford calculated the payout at $200,000. For each injury, $67,000. Total projected payout? Only $49.5 million. $137 million to fix the cars was way more expensive than $49.5 million in compensation for human lives. Simple math. Profit wins. Ford decided, don't fix it. Keep the design as is and ship the cars to dealers. Over the following years, hundreds of horrific accidents occurred. Fathers, mothers, teenagers burned alive on highways across America. Victims' families sued, but Ford, backed by a massive army of corporate lawyers, quietly settled out of court to buy silence. But the Ford giant couldn't cover up the sun forever. Everything began coming to light thanks to a brave investigative journalist named Mark Dowie, writing for a small magazine called Mother Jones. Dowie received a leaked tip from an insider engineer within Ford. This whistleblower secretly handed over internal crash test files and that notorious $11 financial analysis memo. In September 1977, Mother Jones published a bombshell story titled Pinto Madness. The article completely tore off Ford's mask. America was shaken to its core. For the first time, the American public realized in horror that an iconic symbol of national industrial pride valued their lives at less than 11 pocket change dollars. Around the same time,
The tragic case of a 13-year-old boy named Richard Grimshaw broke out. Grimshaw was a passenger in a Ford Pinto that was rear-ended in 1972. The car burst into flames instantly. The driver died, while Grimshaw suffered permanent, disfiguring burns over 90% of his body. Grimshaw's attorney used the article and Ford's leaked secret documents to confront the company in court. In 1978, a California jury handed down a landmark verdict, ordering Ford to pay $2.8 million in personal damages and $125 million in punitive damages. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, NHTSA, immediately stepped in, forcing Ford to issue a recall for 1.5 million Ford Pintos, the largest auto recall in history at the time. The Ford Pinto scandal didn't just end with a vehicle recall. It permanently changed the legal landscape and corporate ethics in America. It forced the federal government to tighten safety standards for fuel systems. And more importantly, it birthed the concept that corporations can be held criminally accountable if they intentionally sacrifice human lives for profit. Independent researchers estimate that anywhere between 270 to 500 people lost their lives in Ford Pinto fires related to the fuel tank flaw. But do you know what the biggest plot twist in history was? Did the man who ordered the creation of the Ford Pinto, President Iacocca, go to prison? Not for a single day. In fact, right at the peak of the Pinto scandal in 1978, Iacocca was fired by Ford, mostly due to a personal feud with Henry Ford II. Almost immediately, he jumped ship to become CEO of rival automaker Chrysler. At Chrysler, Lee Iacocca transformed into a national hero by saving the company from bankruptcy, publishing a multi-million copy best-selling autobiography, and becoming one of the most legendary CEOs in American history. In his hundreds of pages long autobiography, Iacocca barely mentions the name Ford Pinto or the burn victims even once. That is the cold, stark irony of the corporate world. So there you have it. The story of the Ford Pinto is a bitter reminder that sometimes the greatest dangers don't come from monsters in the dark, but from men in tailor-made suits, sitting in air-conditioned boardrooms, running numbers on a calculator. Speaking of cars, just last weekend, I was crawling underneath my manual transmission truck to do some DIY maintenance. Lying there under the greasy chassis, staring at those sharp bolts and the rear axle, I legitimately got chills thinking about those sharp screws pointing straight at the Pinto's gas tank. It really makes you realize taking the wheel and shifting gears with your own hands always feels a lot safer than blindly putting your life in the hands of a corporate Excel spreadsheet. Though at least my gas tank is right where it belongs, and it didn't cost me $11 to stay alive. What about you? What are your thoughts on Ford's $11 calculation? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dives here on Decoded. Thanks for watching. Stay curious. Keep a safe tailgating distance on the road, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.